Well, we need to remember, it was only a couple of years ago that the editor of the Global Times, the leading Chinese Communist Party publication, described us as, quote, pieces of chewing gum on the sole of China's shoes. The Chinese ambassador in Germany warned that German cars could be, quote, deemed unsafe by Chinese authorities unless Huawei was given the green light. Sweden was warned of consequences if it awarded a dissident Swedish-Chinese publisher a prestigious literary prize. Indeed, the Chinese ambassador to Sweden told Swedish public radio only a couple of years ago, quote, we treat our friends with fine wine, but for our enemies, we have shotguns, unquote. So while we must pursue engagement with China, we must also feel free to respectfully stand up to China for not being a good international citizen. We welcome the Chinese students, but if Australia is so good in advancing Chinese scholarship, why can't we talk about China's illegal actions in the South China Sea, about the debt trap diplomacy in the Pacific, about the Port of Darwin? Here we are with Chinese students comprising more than half of New South Wales University's overseas enrolments, while Australia is home to more than 1 million people of Chinese heritage. They value the liberty and freedom of expression that they enjoy in Australia. Many of them have strong family ties to China, but they know China is not a democracy, and they expect us to stand up for human rights. Now, it's only a couple of years ago that a group of university students in Queensland sought a peaceful protest in support of Hong Kong democracy. One young man was assaulted by men who gave every impression of being heavies working for the Chinese state. He was then targeted by a torrent of online hate and death threats from, quote, patriotic Chinese students. Indeed, China's Consul General in Brisbane praised the violence towards those Australian students supporting Hong Kong democracy. Nothing was done. In fact, the young man peacefully protesting for democracy in Hong Kong was himself punished by the university authorities. Was cash flow to the university the reason? Was it because the Chinese Consul General in Brisbane was an adjunct professor at the university? Was it because the Chinese government was funding at least 4 courses at the University of Queensland? One course titled China in a Changing World, Understanding China. Was it because Queensland University had a Confucius Institute? I repeat, we welcome students from all over the world, but we ought to know what is going on re the Chinese influence in our universities. The University of Queensland courses in Chinese policy, music and language were developed in partnership with the university's Confucius Institute, one of 13 such Chinese government-funded soft power centres in Australia which run language and culture classes in university and schools and have been accused of being vehicles for Chinese propaganda. So it's one thing to take the cash from the Chinese students and for universities to worry about cash flow. But what else is going on within these universities that we don't know about?